You're listening to the One Step Deeper podcast with your host, Jimmy Moore and Brittany Davis. OneStepDeeperPodcast.com.
We had a last minute person, like, you know, the little people that come through the neighborhoods trying to sell you things. Well, this just happened to be one of those people that we actually needed to talk to, and they came like seriously 15 minutes before we started. I'm like, you pitch us fast, come on. Yes,
Mama got a podcast to do.
that's exactly what I said. When I opened the door, I said, listen, tell me what you got 15 minutes because I got a podcast.
Yeah.
He's like, I wish I was that cool. I don't have a podcast. He's like, that's cool. Yeah.
And meanwhile, I'm out there weed eating an hour ago, and now this shoulder is killing me. You know how you hold it and it shakes, and it's just like, oh, I think I pinched a nerve.
Oh, goodness.
Yeah, so I'm in, well, you're the one usually in pain with your stomach and stuff, so I'm a little bit in pain today, so let's see how he handles pain, because this is excruciating.
Breath.
I'm going to get angry, I promise. Does pain cause anger? I guess it could.
Yes. After a while, it causes some anger.
Yes. Well, welcome back. We missed you last week. It was so weird not having Brittany on One Step Deeper last week, although my friend Rebecca was phenomenal. I appreciate her stepping in at very short notice. Initially, she said no, and then she's like, no, but I love your show. Let me flip some things around, and we worked it out. I ended up recording weird time compared to what you and I do. But we got it in, and she did a really good job. But it's really, you're like a sight for sore eyes to have back this week.
Yes, it's so good to be back. I did catch the episode with Rebecca, and it was so good. Like, I really enjoyed it. She had some cool points, definitely some different points than Brittany would have brought.
Yeah.
So maybe that was cool to add in, like, other people to get other people's point of view on these types of topics. But I am so grateful to be back. It was a really, really, really hard week for me. And so being back here and being able to talk to you guys about all the things, all the knowledge, I can't wait. I'm really excited to get into this episode.
This is your wheelhouse, that is for sure. Well, since you missed a week, do you want to introduce the show this week? What are we talking about?
This week we're going to talk about anger and how it is not an actual emotion, that it is a reaction. And this is something that I personally have never heard anybody else talk about other than myself. Like, this is something.
I have a feelings barometer today, how you can tell where you are on the feeling spectrum. And yes, specifically focusing on anger is always a reaction to some other feeling. Are you there?
I don't know what happened.
See, she got angry at me, you guys, and she's like, nope, got nothing of this. So what was the real feeling behind that?
Just dig a little deeper and figure out what that was about.
Oh, knowing you, it could have been literally anything.
Well, thank you for coming here. This is the One Step Deeper podcast. You can find us on all the socials. You can find us on YouTube. Every week we air the episodes at 4 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And that's the first place that you can find them. On Mondays, all the episodes release on the audio versions on Apple Podcast, Stitcher, and I'm missing one. Help me out.
Well, Alexa.
My favorite, Spotify. I missed that one. Oh, my goodness. Yes. You can find us on Facebook and Instagram, and all of the episodes are also posted there. Jimmy, Living Low Carb Man on Instagram. Becoming Brittany Lee on Instagram. Exactly. I just seen him.
Today is episode 25 is the episode number. So you done good, my dear. Don't fret over it. Nobody cares about the formalities. They want to get into the meat and meat and potatoes, but neither one of us eat potatoes anymore. So.
I was like, yeah, Jimmy's better at all that kind of stuff. And, I try to hang in there. I'm better at the meat part of it. Let me do this part.
Somebody was just trying to call me. I'm like, don't call me. So that's why
we are getting anger tested today.
Yes, I could get angry about that. but it would just be frustration is all it would be. So let's dig into this and let's stop being silly. I think we missed each other so much. We're going to be a little silly today. But I think a lot of people, they hear anger and they think it is an emotion, and they think it is specifically something that has to do with their feelings. And Inside Out has a lot to do with kind of that misconception that movie really put on people's radar screen, that anger is one of them. So why isn't it? How did this come on your radar screen that it's just a reaction to other emotions and not an emotion itself?
Well, when I started to uncover individual emotions and why I felt them, where they were coming from, I don't believe that we just randomly feel an emotion. Something invokes it, something sparks that feeling. And I really got to uncovering anger. I lived my entire teenage life and early 20s just angry at the world. I was so angry at everything, every person. And I really started to do the work to uncover that. And I realized it was then that I realized that anger wasn't my true emotion. It wasn't the primary emotion that I was feeling. It doesn't mean that anger is bad or that anger is wrong. I see anger as information. Okay, I'm angry. I have this is all coming up. Everything's coming up. I got the word vomit just coming up. I'm angry at the world. And then I have to pause and go, okay, what is this actual feeling? Is it sadness? Is it fear? Is it shame? Is it sensory overload? Is it pain? Is it one of these things? What is the deeper part of anger? And that's when it just clicked for me. Anger is not an actual emotion. It's not a primary emotion. It's a reaction. It's a reaction to something deeper that we're feeling that we don't want to feel, because when we go deeper into those other emotions like fear or sadness or shame, that requires vulnerability, and that's scary for some people.
A lot of times anger is in reaction to hurt. Somebody hurt you either through some trauma, which is what happened to you and me, or some other kind of something triggered us. And instead of dealing with that emotion, whatever the emotion was from the hurt, we lashed out. How many of us have done that? It's so easy to do that, to just lash out, especially at people you care about. You and I had a little bit of a moment over things that were written, and it's okay, let's talk. Because this is no, anger is not the right response. I'm not angry. You're not angry. Let's just figure out what happened. It was just miscommunication, and it happens. But that's the kind of thing that people only see the reaction. And if the reaction is anger, then that evokes a feeling in them that may or may not be valid, because the anger may or may not have been originally valid, and then everybody's angry and we wonder why the world is upside down.
So here is a Brittany bomb, truth bomb, whatever you want to call it. I don't care. Here's a slap in the face. When you take your anger, when that anger arises, and you choose to act in that, and you choose to react in anger to another person, all you're doing is taking your feelings and putting them on somebody else. You're not taking responsibility for what you're feeling. And you cannot process whatever emotion is underlying that anger if you refuse to deal with it and you just, I'm angry. I'm mad. I'm angry at you. I'm going to yell and scream at you, because all you're doing is taking whatever that internal feeling is, you're putting it on somebody else, and now it's their responsibility to deal with that. That's what has happened with generational trauma after trauma after trauma of my family went through some horrible, terrible shit. And they didn't know what to do with that, didn't process it, didn't go through it. They just were angry, and they put their anger on me, and then it was up to me. And I decided, I really don't want to live my life angry all the time. I see people around me miserable. I don't want that.
It is so hard to break that generational trauma, though. I think back to my own family. I know my dad's dad was a beast. I mean, he just yelled, screamed, beat, threw, drank. He was bad. He was a bad dude. So then that was normal. And we've talked about this before on the show. What you learn as a kid is what you think is normal. So then he becomes a very young dad at 17 with my brother, 21 with me. And what does he do? He's very aggressive and uses his voice, and then later uses his hand to cause harm, because that was normal. And then I call him out on it, and I'm like, yeah, I'm not going to be that way. Thankfully, I haven't had kids yet. I think I would be amazing dad now, but in my 20s, I would have been the kid. I don't want to say that. That sounds horrible, but it's what I knew. And even though I found it reprehensible, I'm sure he found it reprehensible when his dad was doing it to him. But when that's what you know, you do what you know.
Yes. And like, here's the confession for everybody who doesn't follow me yet or know my story. I am really into gentle parenting because it appeals to this side of me, this allowing my kids to have emotions and have feelings and not put my anger on them. That's pretty much where I came to gentle parenting from, but I didn't start with gentle parenting.
No.
I started the first several years of my parenting the way that I was parented. And I use methods that I don't use anymore because I think it is me putting my anger on them, and I won't do that anymore.
Does Cammie, because she's the oldest, does she remember some of the old way and go, Mama, that's different than what you used to do?
Yes. So very early on, I remember having the conversation with her, and it was a stark, like, one day we flipped the switch the next day. Like, it wasn't gradual. It's like, we're just doing this. We don't know what the hell we're doing. This is brand new, but we're doing it. Kind of my vibe, huh? Gotta do that. But yes, when we first started, I sat her down. I said, okay, this is what Mama did. Mama used her anger when I would get upset, and I would put my anger on you when you do something and that makes me upset, makes me feel a certain way, disrespected or whatever. What do? I yell, because that's what was done to me. When my parents felt disrespected, they yelled, they raised their voice, they spanked, they did all of these things. And then I learned, maybe I need to deal with the feeling of disrespect within me and not yell at my child. Maybe I need to deal with that, process that, and then go to my child and say, hey, what you did, that was not okay. That made me feel uncomfortable. That wasn't cool. And like work that out. And so I explained that to her, and she was all for the whole, yeah, sure, let's not do that anymore. Yeah. Yes.
Well, and it manifests in your household as less yelling, less angst, less anxiousness, which is good for their bodies health-wise and mental health-wise, and being able to express themselves without any fear. Like, I don't know about you. Yes, I do know about you. When we were kids, the idea of expressing how you truly felt, terrifying, would never, because it would only bring on double the wrath of what you were already getting.
Yes, exactly. And people in my life who have questioned my new parenting techniques that are completely opposite, like, they are so confused. Instead of like, hey, I wonder why she did that. There's no why. That's a question that I love. Like, I like to know why, I went down this path, or why other people choose the path they do. But hey, not everybody's Brittany, right? But yeah, when I really switched over, I got a lot of backlash. Like, I literally have lost family members over this topic, over that anger is not an emotion, it's a reaction, and you got to deal with whatever's underneath that anger. Like, listen, honey, you are an angry person. You have a lot of bitterness, like, piled up and piled up. You have the plate, the plate of shit with the whipped cream from several episodes ago. Like, you're carrying that around with you, and you can't help it. It's not pretty anymore. We all smell it, okay? You have to deal with that. Please deal with your anger and the emotions that are underneath that, because it's not your primary emotion. You're broken, you're hurting, you're shameful, you're guilty, whatever it is, honey, you got to deal with that.
You guys tried the Paleo Valley beef sticks? These beef sticks are 100% grass-fed and grass-finished. And many of the grass-fed beef sticks on the market today are actually finished with grains. They use beef sourced from small domestic farms in the United States. They only use real organic spices to flavor the beef sticks versus all the conventional spices sprayed with pesticides and other natural flavors from GMO. They also ferment the sticks, which creates naturally occurring probiotics, all great for your gut health. And best of all, they taste amazing. Again, they're Paleo Valley, my favorite beef stick on the market today. Go check them out, you guys. PaleoValley.com. Use the coupon code Jimmy at checkout for 15% off your first order. Paleo Valley beef sticks.
Well, and a lot of people see anger at least in the Christian circles, as like a sin. But then I always say, well, what did Jesus do in the temple? He was throwing tables over and yelling at them. How dare you defile, my Father's house? It was just, anger itself is not a bad thing always. Sometimes there's good reason to be angry in the right circumstance. And in that circumstance, they were gambling in the church and using all kinds of, they were sinning, basically. Let's just put it that way. So him responding with anger was the way they needed to get his attention. Could you imagine them? Jesus is all docile and then suddenly throwing things and oh my gosh, he's going rogue on it. And so his anger was not an emotion. It was the disappointment in them. It was a lot of other feelings that then manifested as anger. I think that's the only time in the Bible he ever got like angry to that level.
Yeah.
So,
but that right,
go ahead.
Sorry. But that right there, for the Christian community listening, that right there should show you, Christian means Christ-like. We're supposed to be like Christ. If we're supposed to be like Christ, then anger as a reaction is not inherently bad. It's what you do with it. Now, had he gone in there and like started punching people, like hurting people, okay, okay, no, that's the line. But he didn't do that. He used his anger, and it was a reaction. And so that's why I tell people, anger's not bad. It just shows you, I got something I need to work on underneath there.
Well, and look what happened. He could have gone in there meek and, okay, y'all need to break this up. This is not good. This is defiling my Father's name. No, that would not have gotten the attention. So sometimes there are feelings that are inside of you that maybe to get attention, there needs to be some righteous indignation type anger. I think far too many people, though, take some little feeling they have, which honor the feeling, but then they blow it up into anger, and people are like, my God, what's wrong with you? Like, they don't realize this little thing became this huge thing because they didn't know how to properly manage it, which is why we need to do a feelings barometer here today, determining what you feel, why maybe it's starting to evoke up those feelings of wanting to be angry or wanting to be some way other than the feeling and emotion itself.
Yeah, the most powerful question that we have in our toolbox when it comes to emotions is why. You pause. Why am I feeling this? Where is this coming from? Ask the who, what, where, when, why questions, okay? Ask all of those. Why am I feeling this? Where is it coming from? Do I actually need to feel this? Like when it comes to frustration, let's say you're trying to fix something and you're frustrated, and do you actually need to feel frustration right now? Or can you get the job done better if perhaps we work through that frustration and channel that and get it done? So just honoring what you feel. But when it comes to anger, like people let these little things, like a little bit of sadness, a little bit of fear, a little bit of guilt, a little bit of this, just pile up. And they haven't dealt with any of the small things. And the small things after a while, I mean, a penny is a penny. But if you got 100, you got $1. It piles up. And so they let it pile up and pile up. Then they don't know what to do with it. And it's like this sensory overload. And that one little thing just blows the lid off of it, and there's your anger. But if we would have dealt with the individual situations and not let it rise, I mean, I take this like with parenting too, going back to that analogy. If my kid does something small and it kind of irks me, but I just ignore it, and then I just ignore it, and then I just ignore it, they don't realize that I got this building, this thing building inside of me, and then I just get angry, and they're
What did he just say?
He said there's a storm coming in.
like, well, why are you yelling at me? Well, I know why, because I let it build and build and build instead of that first time going, hey, can we not do that? Can we go in another area? If you want to be loud, can we go outside? Instead of be taking care of the one thing, I let it build up. And it's the same thing with any other thing in a job. When you're in a career and your boss says something small, like, I'll ignore it. And then something, I'll ignore it. And you ignore it. And then all of a sudden you're blowing up at your boss and you're like, maybe I shouldn't have done that.
You're bringing up such a good point that when we don't adequately deal with our feelings when we feel them initially, that's when the anger starts to build. Not many people go right from small feeling to big anger. It's usually small feeling, small feeling, small feeling, small feeling, little more feeling, little more feeling, little more, big feeling, big feeling, big feeling, blah, and it just cascades. You're right. Like, and I know that's what happened with my dad. Like he was pretty angry a lot of the time, but you could see it and if he was having a good day, he would be less volatile. But if he was having a bad day, then's when the anger came out, and then's when he started punching me and throwing me into walls, and berating me and all the things. But even like I took that into college. I remember vividly being 19 years old, and we were on a mission trip with the Baptist Student Union, the BSU, and I got lost in whatever town we were in on this, I think it was New Orleans. I got lost. Could not find my group for nothing. I was getting frustrated. I was scared. I didn't really know where they were. I was getting worried that I was holding everybody up. All those feelings. And when I finally found them, the very kind Christian pastor, leader of the BSU, said, "Hey, Jimmy," who's very cheerful to me. And I feel so bad that I did this. But I said, "Shut up."
Pivot! Pivot! Shut up! Shut up! Shut up!
In anger.
Oh.
And I immediately felt that. What did I just say? Like, yes. I was frustrated, I was scared, I was all the things. But what did I do? I lashed out in anger. Yeah. And I think I told you this story recently where I reached out to him like 5 years ago on Facebook. He's still alive. And I wrote him and I said, "You remember that incident?" He said, "Actually, no." It really bothered me. But and I wanted to bring this point out. He is one of the good ways that if somebody does respond in anger to feelings, he showed you how you turn that around in someone. Instead of lashing back in anger, which he could have easily done, he was loving. He was kind. He was all the things that I needed in that moment for all those feelings I was having. Even though I expressed those feelings in the worst possible way as anger.
Yeah.
And it still bothers me 2.5 decades later. Like I still feel upset that I did that in that moment.
But you also just said it, like you had all these underlying feelings, and as a kid, you really don't know how to process those. And just in the case that you were anyway, you don't know how to do that.
And I was still 2 years out of my trauma.
Yeah. So, you gotta. Yeah, no, you're good. You're good.
But I'm saying that context adds more layers to this conversation. That anger just doesn't happen.
Right.
Because there's layers involved. I had physical and emotional abuse. I don't know what I'm doing out on my own now, and I'm trying to feel my way in this world. I'm at college, and this is a whole hell of a lot harder than high school was. I actually have to study now. I had all these layers going on that moment. And people are like, well, you should know better. And I'm like, why would you know better? Don't at me with that stuff.
Ew, that's my favorite.
Ew.
This is embarrassing. Like seriously. No, seriously. Oh my gosh.
Ew.
But going back to the pastor guy, I wanted to say something because there's a time and a place to come back at somebody. So for example, if you get angry with me, I'm going to give you the benefit of the doubt and go, whoa, hey, what's going on? There's something deeper. And you do the same thing with me. Matter of fact, we kind of did that this morning where I was just like, you know what, screw this. I'm just going to call. Like, I ain't even doing this shit this morning. I ain't even in the mood. But all of my stuff from dealing with grief and pain and hurt, it was making me react in anger. And I know, you've been struggling watching your friend go through this. And so it would be easy for you to go to anger. And I was like, you know what? I don't need a life example of how to deal with anger as a reaction. I have lived this. I don't need this. Let's just talk. And so everything was fine. So that's a really good example. But I'm going to get into a tiny bit of something that will have to become a future episode, and that is boundaries and the need to set boundaries in your life.
Yeah.
When it comes to a person who you've over and over and over been the nice one, gone back, said, hey, let's work this out over and over and over again. And every single time the pattern happens of they get angry, you feel like shit. They push their anger, their feelings on you. You feel like crap, and you feel like, oh, I gotta fix it. When you didn't actually do anything wrong, walk away. Please set that boundary, walk away. Because before you know it, their anger is going to become, you're going to be infected with their anger. Whatever they're feeling, they're going to infect you with that, and you're going to walk around angry at the world. Me. I did this. I allowed everybody else's anger. I took that on. And, you know, by the way, being an empath, yeah, that's all sweet and all, but being an empath is actually a trauma response if you feel responsible for dealing with everybody else's emotions around you.
Yeah.
So maybe look at that empathy that you have, the empathetic reactions that you have, and really observe, am I feeling this because I love this person or because I feel responsible for their emotions? Okay, that was a little side note there. But seriously, if someone is constantly abusing you and telling you, like, and just putting their anger on you, please walk away. Please walk away. Don't stay in that. That's abusive.
And sometimes the anger comes across as passive aggressive, so it doesn't feel like anger. And we got a couple of episodes coming up very soon on narcissism and gaslighting. Whole episodes, guys. We're gonna touch on those topics because they're so related to so many things we talk about, especially interpersonal relationships. And I know you deal with heavy narcissists in your life. I've got some in my life. And both of them like to use gaslighting with each of our circumstances. So can create some anger as well. And again, it's frustration of why can't I have normal relationships with people I'm supposed to have a relationship with? And so
here's a taste of that episode. When it comes to narcissism, or if you have somebody in your life, they will nitpick, and a little bit, until you become angry, so they can go, oh, that's your fault. Look at you. What are you doing? Why are you that way? So be careful for those people.
Yes, and then, because they know how to pick at the scab in just the right way, and they know how to push your buttons because they know all your buttons.
I'm not angry. You're angry. What are you talking about? Where did this come from? Why are you so upset? I don't understand.
I can't tell you how many conversations I've been in with somebody like that where I'm trying to stay rational. Why are you angry? I'm not angry. But then they like push. Then I get angry and they're like, see, you're angry.
See, you're angry.
Yeah, that's all frustration, brother.
Exactly. I got frustration underneath this anger. I'm trying to talk to you. You just, what?
Oh. And you know what the worst is? And you and I, again, had examples of this, and we've done it a few times, where things are texted, and so then they're interpreted through the filter of however you're reading them at that moment. And it happens on social media all the time. You could write a comment that has no context with tone or anything, but people will read it in a certain way and go, oh my gosh, and you're like, what? No, this. I'm like, that's not how I meant it. Like, a lot of anger is misinterpretation as well of either what's said or what's written. It's a little easier to misinterpret what's written than it is what's said. Because said, especially if you know the person, like I know you very well. This morning when we were talking, you were so tired. You were so scatterbrained because of the blur that this week and a half, 2 weeks has been the last 2 weeks for you. And I knew that, like, out of context, I'd be like, are you high? Are you on something? Like, I didn't know what, but I knew what was wrong.
But I knew it too. And that's why I was like, okay, Brittany, come on. Like, you literally teach this every day. Okay, pull it back, deal with the problem, quit hiding underneath the guilt and the grief and the pain and the hurt. Just go through it. Just barge through it.
Feel the feels. Yes.
It's really hard, by the way. Like, side note, y'all, grief is something else. Grief is not it does not follow any of the rules. And there's been a lot of anger this week. A lot of anger.
I was going to ask you about that because when I lost my brother Kevin in 2008, there was anger. He was 41 years old. My only full-blooded brother, loved him to death. And I've been telling you a lot about how I dealt with the grief of that to help you with what's coming for you. And it's not easy. And there were bouts of anger and mad at God, mad at circumstances that led to that. It's so easy to fall into anger, but what's the real emotion? You miss them. What's the real emotion? You lament what could have been, or there's just so many things that pop up. Well, what are some of those emotions you're having?
Yeah. So, earlier when I was talking about all the layers of emotions, that requires vulnerability. And so it's easier to react in anger. It's just because it's like the dog that's like barking at the neighbor dog. What do they do? Just puff up. Like, I'm angry. I'm big. And that's but really, if that dog is in the same fence, that's not the reaction they would have. They'd be like, oh, okay, yeah, it would be docile. And so, like, for me, that's kind of what anger has been. It's like this big puff up emotion of, okay, I don't want to feel this vulnerable shit. I just want to be big right now. Let me feel big.
My prince and I are doing keto, but he keeps falling off the wagon.
It's fine, babe. I got this Dragon Burger protein style.
It's not fine. There are hidden sugars and carbs in there.
Oh man, this is hard.
Keto doesn't have to be hard. Just use Keto Chow, the magical meal replacement that makes keto easy. Each delicious shake provides 1/3 of your daily nutrients, meaning it's more than just a snack. It's a complete keto meal. Once upon a time, you clicked here, and we're happy with Keto Chow ever after.
Jimmy loves ketochow.com.
That is such a good point, that there's a release that comes from anger, especially if it's the screaming, yelling,
yes,
muscles tightening, rah, kind of anger. That, yes, it's destructive to the people around, but for that person in that moment, whatever the emotions and feelings are that led to that, it is somewhat of a release. Is it a healthy release? No, not always. In Jesus's case, it was. You need to get their attention. Oh, Jesus went rogue on us. So, but for most people, and especially if the anger turns to violence, which is what happened with my dad beating me, and then that's what he saw from his dad, that anger that he had, and bestowed it on my dad. So, so anger can be both a good thing and a bad thing. Yeah. And sometimes that release does not provide relief. It can for a lot of people, but not everybody.
I definitely want to get back to what you're saying about what I'm feeling, but that what you said about anger not being a release for some people, because when they get angry and they blow up, they feel that tiny moment of relief, and then it is immediately guilt. And guilt is another one of those vulnerable emotions. You don't want to feel guilty. You don't want to feel upset that you've done this. And so you go right back to anger, and you just kind of live in anger.
Oh, you're describing the pastor experience again. Because when I said shut up, it was in anger. And I immediately felt that in my chest. Guilt. And then I sat down and the guilt turned back to anger again. Like I was angry at myself. Why did I do that? And then, of course, everybody's looking at me and not wanting to talk to me. And at that moment, I needed a friend. And I think it was about 10 minutes they let me just sit there, calm down. And somebody said, "You okay?" So that was cool. But I was dealing with a lot of shiz at that time in my life. So
yes. But back to what you said a while ago and asking like what I've been feeling and how it has become anger. And I've had to be very careful to not let, like, obviously just so sad. I have been so sad. Now, it's not quite the same, like it was with you for your brother. He was young. Mr. Chris was 71, and he had lived the fullest life. The man has built buildings and gone to Belize and been a travel nurse and been to all 50 states. And he lived such a full life. I could go on and on and on. So, like, there's not that. I don't feel like he was taken too soon. You know, there's not that. There's not anger there. But it's just like, damn, man, I finally get my life together. I have a house and my family. And he watched me go from this angry, bitter teenager to who I am now. And I'm like, he's not going to be here for the next part. And, like, that is just gut-wrenching. And then he's basically like a dad to me, and so his son Lee is like a brother to me, and Lee was just kind of saying, this sucks, man. I'm going to get married and he's not going to be here. This is going to suck. And so it's really just thinking about all the things he's not going to be here for. And that's where, like, I just get so angry. I think about Christmas was his favorite time of the year. I am not prepared for Christmas yet. Like, I got to mentally work myself up. Yes.
You're getting there now. Just thinking about all the things, and I was concerned about you talking about him too much today, so we're going to move on. The point is, those feelings can turn to anger, and literally, guys, any negative feeling can turn to anger. Let's not pretend like disappointment can't turn to anger, frustration. Right. Anger, obviously, sadness can turn to anger. But the only thing that doesn't is like exhilaration. You're not going to be angry from exhilaration. You're not going to be angry from happy. You're not going to be angry from positive things. But and I'm even like thinking out loud, all the feelings and emotions, most of them are negative or on that trend towards negative.
Yeah,
isn't all the way negative, but it could trend towards negative that makes you mad and angry. So yeah, it's.
Well, I feel like all emotions are like an evil playing field, like even playing field. They're all even, and like happy isn't good and sad bad. Like that's like emotions are literally just neutral.
Yeah,
it's what you do with them.
Yeah.
And so if you're frustrated, be frustrated. But don't act out of frustration.
Let's dig into that, because that's what people do. They just naturally go to whatever is comfortable and normal as a reaction, and thus the anger comes out. How do you get someone from frustration to not angry? What do they do with that?
Oh, goodness. That's a loaded question. I mean, it really just depends on the situation. So I'm a story kind of person. So if my child, for example, has done something that has frustrated me and I just want to yell.
Like Alma Grace jumping on the bed the other day and Shardy has a broken arm.
Yes.
Mama was frustrated that day.
I was very frustrated that day. And so, like, I wanted to yell and I wanted to scream and like, are you freaking kidding me? You've already broken an arm. Get down. What are you doing? Hold on. Oh, my Grace, it's not a smart idea for you to do that. Now, that was like an immediate. I could bring that back in. However, the other day, what?
I was going to say, how did you do that? How do you get from that inclination to want to be angry, but then choose not to be angry and be calm and loving?
This is sad. You want to know how I did that? I remember what my parents did to me. I remember all the times that I was just playing on the bed and it would immediately, they would scream at me or yell at me or make me feel like shit. And it could have been resolved so much calmer. And I remember the years, all of the anger that I dealt with for years. I don't want my kids to do that. I don't want my kids to have to go through that. I don't want my kids at 28 having terrible relationships with their parents because their parents live in anger all the time. Like, I don't want them to deal with all the pain that I have. And so if I'm frustrated, I'm not going to lash out at my children. You know, they're baby. They're my babies. I don't want to do that. I don't want to hurt them.
My mama still calls me her baby, and I'm 49, so you're always going to have them as your babies.
Yes, they're my babies. But like the other day, it was after the funeral, and we were all kind of sitting around and laughing, and my kids, can we put our feet in the pool? the pool is gross. The pool is nasty. Like, the water's clean, but like the pool part was dirty. And I was like, yeah, sure, put your feet in. Well, what do kids do? When you don't set like a firm boundary, they're like, hey, we're gonna put our knees in. Hey, we're up to our waist. Hey, we're all the way in the water. We're still holding on to the rail though. The ramp, the ladder. And the next thing I see is them like around the pool, like holding the side of the pool, like walking around the pool. And I was like, oh, no, out, get out. No. This has escalated from feet in the pool to whole bodies. And I could just see one of y'all slipping on the green, nasty part of the pool and falling into water. No. Mom says, get out. So, of course, one was like, oh, man. And the other one's like, no. What? We're in the South, okay? You can't say that down here. Like, what? And I reacted, and that was okay. I didn't yell or scream. I was just like, hey, excuse me.
Well, you didn't.
Not safe.
You didn't jump to anger right away.
Yes.
You gave them that. You were giving them steps that were gentle. You were doing very good, gentle parenting until it got to the point where one was defiant. Yeah. They're the ones that got angry. Saying no was an angry reaction to, I'm frustrated. I want to do what I want to do, and mama's not letting me. That was them being angry. So you being firm back was not necessarily anger back, but I'm going to match your energy with what I'm feeling because I know what's best for you, and I don't want to see you slip on the green stuff.
Yes.
There. I don't know exactly how you responded, but yes, that is that's a Jesus there that.
Oh, it was cute.
A negative way. What?
It was cute how I reacted because I was sitting in the chair and I was watching from afar, and all of the adults are kind of sitting on the deck watching the kids, and she said no, and I jumped off. Said, oh, okay, it's time for mama to get up, and my husband was there, and she said no again, and so he had to pull her out and said, okay, we're going to calm down, then we're going to have a really good conversation about what just happened here. And so we explained to her, listen, Mom was all about you asking me questions. Like, if you were in the pool and you said, why? I would have answered, I don't feel it's safe for you to be in there. But you just like, no.
Oh, right.
And like, I'm okay with defiance. Like, I'm okay with that, by the way. I'm okay, and I honor that, hey, she wanted to be in the pool. That's cool. But yeah, we just had to deal. That was a little situation where there was some underness of the anger, and the other adults were like looking at me like, you about to spank her? I know you about to spank her.
Don't tell me who it is, but I know who it was. You don't tell me exactly who your defiant one is. We'll leave it right there. Right? You know who I'm talking about.
She that middle child.
Yes. Well, I want to bring up, because you were talking about earlier your older parents having the anger issues still now, and they're in their 40s. Like, this is the thing about anger. When you let it out, it keeps wanting to come out, and it becomes a habit at some point. Rather than dealing with those feelings and emotions in the moment, you lash out in anger, and then it just becomes this convenient release for all emotions that are negative, that you made negative. And so there's people going all the way to their dying breath, still angry about things in their life. And I'm going, you could have dealt with that years ago. What do you do with your life? You spit it all away when you you stay angry all the time. And we know people like that in our lives.
And it makes me so sad, Jimmy. Like, these people that are in my life, or the people that I talk to who message me on Instagram and on Facebook, and I just talk to them and they're just so angry. And I'm like, ooh, honey, I've been there. I have been there. But I wasted so many years of my life being bitter. Like, I refuse to live there. And that doesn't mean that I don't get angry. Guys, I deal with a lot of anger still. But I know, yes, what you're saying.
If your Monday show was called Bitter with Brittany, nobody would watch. Instead of Better with Brittany.
Yes, exactly. But yeah, I lived my life bitter and angry and hurt for so long. I didn't have meaningful relationships. They were all surface level because I had to be surface level. I couldn't be vulnerable with people. They were going to hurt me, you know? And so it's anger takes away every good thing possible. No one wants to be around you when you're angry. Like, very few people want to deal. And like, even I know this. Like, when I get angry, I tell you, oh, I need a minute. I got to calm this down. Let me deal with this before I come back.
You know what's interesting to me, and I'm thinking about my dad who abused me. He would be angry and have anger with me, but then he could turn it off and be charming with other people. So his outside persona did not match his behind closed doors persona. That means it's a conscious choice. And this is something I wanted to bring out here today, that this anger isn't always a reaction, because he chose, and other people do this as well, chose the situation he wanted to be angry in and chose not to be angry in other situations. Now, I saw him when we weren't behind closed doors, and I could see in his eyes the anger building, but he never showed it to people that didn't know him. But he sure did show it behind closed doors. That's interesting, right?
Yeah, personally, I think it's really gross when you decide to take your anger out on your family, on your children. That's gross. Please do better. Please do better.
Yeah.
Like, I don't want you to take your anger out on anybody, but God dang, do better. Okay, don't let it pile up all day long if somebody upsets you, and bring it home and scream and let all that out at your kids or at your spouse. Like, ew.
Well, they're a convenient target because they're who's there.
Yes, they're there. And it's behind closed doors and nobody knows, and I can keep this persona. Jimmy, I have these people in my life. These people that put on this beautiful, oh, look at social media. I do this for this person. I do this for this person. Look what I did for this person. But behind closed doors, they're awful people. They're awful, and they treat you like shit. And then when you voice this, they've created this persona of themselves that people are like, she's lying, she's not telling the truth, there's no possible way he could do that or she could do that, because I know this person. No, you don't. You know that person for 1 hour a week, or what you see on Instagram or on Facebook. You know this person superficially. I know this person when they take their shoes off. I know this person behind closed doors. I know this person after a long day at work. That's when their personality comes out. Not when you're in a crowd of people and you're having a good time throwing back drinks. That's not when the personality comes out. It comes out when it's just them alone in their house where they can relax. That's when it comes out. And that's the part, man, we have to be so careful, especially talking about anger. Like, it would be easy to talk about abusive relationships, not just physical abusive relationships, but these kinds of relationships where people come home and like take their anger out on you. I could never see Wild Man coming home going, I had a terrible day at work, you're a horrible wife. Never. He would never do that.
Especially in front of your girls. Would
Never. When he gets home and he tells me, I've had a horrible day at work, he's like, all I want to do, I don't want to talk. I don't want to, nothing. Like, I just want to hold you. There's his personality. There's who he is. When he's and so, like, honestly, look at yourself. When all these anger arises and you just want to let it out, look at who you are and where you are at the end of the day. Are you lashing out at your kids or your spouse? Do you have some And it's hard, guys. I'm honoring it right now to finally open up the conversation that you have an anger issue and you need to deal with it. You have to open up all the vulnerable emotions. You have to be vulnerable to work through this.
Man, I wish I knew that in my 20s, because my whole late teens, in 20s, into my early 30s was anger galore from the trauma. I've talked about it very openly, about 15 years to process all that. And I processed it horribly. I wish I had known that when I got angry, it was something else, and that somebody helped. I wish I had Brittany in my life, but you weren't alive yet. But it was just one of those things that I needed to know that I was frustrated. I was upset of what happened to me. I was scared, looking behind my back, thinking he was coming to get me. I was all these things that was not anger, but they all manifested as anger. And then manifested as pain. And I was frustrated. I was gaining weight. I was all these things. And it wasn't like one day I woke up and that anger just went away. It just, when I became more, and I think getting older helps a little bit. You'll find this as you get older and you have teenage girls and the hair starts to fall out from that. I think over time you just learn, okay, it's okay. And especially these last 2 years, knowing you the way I have, I've learned how to feel those feels of those emotions and live in the moment of those emotions, so it doesn't lead to anger. Does that mean I never get angry? I get angry, but less volatile anger than I used to. My anger now is just, I'm just frustrated. But it's like, it doesn't even come across as anger to most people. You've heard me in my angry moments. It's more frustration, it's more disappointment than it is anger. So I think I'm genuinely feeling that feeling and emotion now without it being anger. In fact, I'm going to tell on us again. In that text we had back and forth today, you get angry. I'm not angry, actually. I'm really not. I'm frustrated. I've got other emotions going on.
Yeah, and that was awesome. Like, I was going to tell on myself too, that in my 20s, and this is why I want everybody to know, you can change. I do not believe the statement that people cannot change. I do not, because I am living proof right here in front of you that people can change. In my early 20s, my husband went through a lot. I love him. I was never abusive to him, but I let him know I'm angry. And I gotta fix it.
Yes.
And he wanted to fix it. And I was like, no, I'm angry. He's like, just let me touch you. Don't touch me. I'm angry. And that would manifest okay, I have to throw something. And there were, y'all, I am sad, like saying this out loud. I was the slam doors, close things, slam the door and walk outside, just breathe like that. Like, I had some anger issues. I was yes. I threw some books one time. Not at him. Like, I just need to, like, let it out. Yes, yeah. I punched some walls before. I had a lot of anger. I had to deal with.
Ooh, I kicked when I was 17. It was my first year in college. I just left the house, and I was at Shoney's as a cook. And I remember being frustrated because there were a lot of orders and I was getting behind. And I went to the back, and when the door wouldn't open, I kicked it as hard as I could with my right foot, and I broke my big toe. Yes, I kicked the shit out of that door. And I was like, okay, don't be so angry, Jay. I had to, like, stand on that foot the rest of the night to cook, and it swelled up. And yes, sometimes anger doesn't always end well for yourself, but most of the time it doesn't end well for other people, because not only did you give them unfair, undue, negative reaction, now that's firmly ensconced in their psyche that they almost feel like, well, they did that to me, I have the right to be angry back to them. And there's this, again, generational, even within familial and friendship types things. Well, it's a tit for tat. Well, you were mad at me, so I have a right to be mad at you, which is why it's good to have a loving person like that pastor guy was to me. He never once showed anger to me. He was firm with me a few times during our relationship, but he was never angry.
Yeah, and like, so that's why I push for that in parenting and even in friendships, I had a friend over last night and we were talking about some demise of our friendships over the years and what led to the demise of our friendships over the years, like different ones. And we both were like, ooh, we were kind of angry, weren't we? We were kind of bitter. We were kind of angry. We were kind of, justifying our actions. But now here we are later on really talking about it and getting to a point where we want to have those friendships, even like you and I have. I've never had another friendship outside of, the friendship that I have with Wildman like the friendship that I have with you. If I have a problem, I don't sit on it. I don't let it fester. I tell you right then. Like, that hiding shit. No, none of that. But no, I don't do that. I tell you like it is. And I try to do that in all of my relationships. Some other people are not receptive to that kind of boldness. And so I have to set boundaries.
In fact, the interpretation today was, well, you're blaming me for that. I'm like, no, I'm not blaming anyone. No, that's not me. And it was like, it was good because I love it when we have issues. It's right away. We're hitting it. We're not letting it fester. We're not letting it turn to anger. So it was good. Like when you called, I'm like, oh, thank God. Like this type of stuff is for the birds. So.
Yeah. One last story. I know I got to wrap it up soon. I also learned all of this through my husband's family, and I feel like I've talked about them before. They are like the most, oh my goodness, Thanksgiving. I go in, the first time I'd ever been to their Thanksgiving, me and Chris had just started dating, and we go in, and Chris is like, I'll be there after work. You can just go ahead and hang out with Mom. And so I was there, and his sister was there, and him and his mom the sister and the mom, literally start like screaming at each other. And I'm like,
sorry, did I put you in the spot there? Did I make you look embarrassed? What the hell? If you're not going to act right around there, be part of the family. You want to make a scene during Thanksgiving. Yeah, really? I do. Because if you don't want to be part of the family, then get out. You're not part of the family the way you act.
What am I doing? Why am I here? What is going on? This is uncomfortable. I do not like it. They immediately went to anger and reacted in anger. And I kid you not, they get it all out and immediately go back to normal. And I'm like, what? What just happened? Like, if that was my family, we wouldn't talk for a solid 7 months. Like, that's a 7-month sentence right there. I was so confused. But that's where I was like, okay, maybe let's not react in anger, but let's get it out. Let's do it right here and now. Let's not let it fester. Let's get it out. And so I learned that from Wildman's family of get it out. Maybe a little bit healthier form of getting it out. But yeah, that was definitely interesting part of this dynamic of how anger is a reaction, not an emotion.
Well, and what you're demonstrating is there's a lot of families where this is the norm. And so then they get out in the real world and that's all they know how to do is anger, not realize, oh, you're supposed to feel those feels and feel those emotions. So I'm really glad we did this today. Episode 25, you guys. Anger is not necessarily an emotion. It's a reaction. And hopefully we helped you kind of have a feelings barometer today so you can know that when you feel anger, before you respond with that anger, analyze it. What are you actually feeling beneath that anger? And it's usually one of the things that we talked about here today. One Step Deeper Podcast.com is the website. Go check us out there. You can see all the past episodes. We debut these on Sundays at 4 p.m. Eastern Time on YouTube. Go check out the YouTube premiere. Type in a keyword search, One Step Deeper. You will find the show there. We also air this as a traditional podcast. Hello, all the podcast listeners out there. Over on Mondays, over on Spotify, Stitcher, Apple Podcast, and Alexa. So go check those out. We're also on social media. We put it up on IGTV, on Instagram, as well as on the One Step Deeper Podcast Facebook page. It's up there as well. We usually try to put it up right around the time of the YouTube video premiere so that you could watch it on Sunday. But yeah, it's so good to have you back. It's so good to be back. And we were just planning like what's coming up. We got some doozies, and next week, we've been teasing it for months, you guys. Religion, pretty hard next week. Traditional Christianity, and not that we're going to bash it, but we want to talk about some of the new. I was talking to Rebecca about this a little bit last week's episode of, there's a lot of things in Christian culture that are, so we're going to talk about those parts.
Yes.
But we'll see you again next week.
One Step Deeper Podcast.com.
So many things that they pack into the athletic greens. The main reason why I love them is it puts it all in one place. Like literally you'd have to a la carte buy all of these different supplements, and they do it all in one package. So if you go to athleticgreens.com/Jimmy, and you can get a special discount if you go there, and the discount is you get a free 1-year supply of their vitamin D as well as some of their travel packs. Go check it out, you guys. athleticgreens.com/Jimmy.